Greetings, adventurers, travelers, and fellow keepers of the lake. How are you all doing? Welcome. Don't you just hate when you have to manage music while playing D&D? Like, as a DM, like, let's be real. You take your phone, you connect it to a Bluetooth speaker, you open Spotify, you have like 15 playlists with like suspense, horror suspense, slightly more suspense, fantasy, this and that, and you're either scrolling to the lists to find something while the players are rolling initiative or whatever the equivalent of that is in the game you're playing, or for example you start to go into like a nostalgic moment and you try to like keep eye contact while you subtly try to change the music. I mean, it's a skill you will learn and you learn to hide it, but it requires you to use a chunk of your DM brain, a chunk of that processing power for managing something that can be done in an easier way. Like streamers are doing it for quite some time now, right? Same goes with just using a laptop. Like you have a bunch of tabs, you have to like remember which tab is the one you have put your music on, and yeah, it's a mess. I think I solved it in a hobby DIY budget up way. I think I solved it for all of us. Roll the intro. Okay, so before going into like how I stumble onto this and my prototypes and how I would use this, how I use this, and what are some of the sounds that I think are the most important and you should focus on, I will link the second video in the description where you can see just the tutorial, a couple of minutes long, that will get you going like through the installation and the setup and how it's used. And also you will have links in the description to the GitHub page where you can see all of the features and all of these instructions in a written form. Also, this project is open sourced, and that means that there are no malicious cave goblins in the code that could screw with your PC. So don't worry about that. That's the whole thing. Open source means the code is available to everyone. And I also invite all of the programmer fellow keepers of the lake to come look at the code. I mean, it's garbage, of course. I do programming as a day job, so this is just bodged up together after hours. But yeah, have a look, make pull requests, modify it. Let's get together as a community and make something that's good, useful, cool, and free for everyone. If you don't know where you are, well, welcome to the Barlow Keep channel where we talk about creative things. Currently, I'm obsessed with TTRPG, so we're doing that, and this video is about using an external keyboard as a soundboard for your game. So just to set things straight, I usually don't play with any technology on the table. Like, I keep my laptop running Windows that this soundboard is connected to under the table on a smaller table, but around the table, I prefer there isn't any screens, there isn't any technology. I know people are using laptops as their like go-to platforms for like prep. I use Professor's DM approach where everything is on 2 pages in an A4 notebook, which is great. Everything is there, you don't have to flip. I have some index cards on hand, and in that tech-free environment, I want to be able to just change the music without fiddling around with technology. Something that can be done in an instant. And I started Googling, like, is there a soundboard type of thing for this? Turns out there is. Like, you can buy a done deal 10 to 20 key soundboard that you plug into your computer and you can like configure all the keys, they can change color and whatever. It costs $200. Like what is that? Like 10 bucks per key? That's a lot. For my standards, that's a lot. As someone who's working in tech, I was like, okay, why can't we use an external keyboard for this? Plug it in, click the buttons, play sounds. Why is this such a hard thing? Well, it turns out if you press things to play sounds on that keyboard, you're typing on the computer. So no, that doesn't work. I found some hacks, like some Linus Tech Tips videos and things like that. Nothing worked. So I sat down, used my forbidden elven knowledge of the low-level operating system stuff, and created the program that does this. It's rough around the edges, it's buggy a bit, but it should be easy enough to use, and it should make sharing these keyboard layouts easy and accessible for everyone. So let me tell you the story. The first thing that I did, and I will put this on screen, was this pretty lady. I did all the drawings myself, like with the marker. Turns out drawing on keys that have like acrylic color on them is pretty hard. But yeah, I made this keyboard as an initial test. and it worked amazingly. Then I tried to mount it on the table and I broke it. So then there was the time for the prototype number 2. I wanted it to be wireless. I wanted it to be easily swappable, like you can swap layout of the keys easily. And I wanted it to be something that I can share with you, like I create a package, a sound package, and for a certain, I don't know, scenario. Let's say we're playing Call of Cthulhu and I have like a curated collection of sounds that I want to share with you. I can just post it somewhere, take a photo of my keyboard, so you arrange the buttons in the same way, and you just load the package and you have the same soundboard as I did. That's where I ended up with this. Each key has a little Velcro thing where you can take it off, put it somewhere else. That's how it works. I tried like magnetic stuff, but it's too pricey. I tried like some other types of like adhesive that either is too strong or wears off too quickly. So Velcro turned out to be pretty good. I can buy a bunch of it in a local market, just cut out a couple of things, go over all the keys, and you have on the big keyboard you have 120 something keys. And I think that's a lot, but we'll come back to that. So I arranged the music to be up here, some sound effects for weather here, I don't know, monsters are over there, some town ambience is here, things like that. Spells are here, I don't know, like leveling up, fumbles, that sort of thing is here. And at one point I started like using this, I had it mounted next to me while I'm DMing, so I got really comfortable with it, and I used the big one for Pathfinder mostly, like something that's more of like a sandbox type of thing. I kind of got so used to it that I was playing it almost as an instrument while we are playing and like crafting this very intricate like sound landscapes. I can't even explain how much it elevated everything, how much it impacts the players when we're playing Call of Cthulhu, for example. It is really something that I as a musician lacked in terms of like sound management in the game, and now it exists. But as with everything, the novelty wore off, and I started like to think about like having smaller soundboards, something that's just a couple of sounds. I think it's more related to me just figuring out which sounds I use the most and which sounds are like never played, and the amount of space that the whole keyboard takes up. So I decided to go with the prototype number 3, and here it is. I will put it also on the screen. So it's just a Genius numpad, and the cool thing is that the buttons in the middle, you can toggle between them by pressing numpad. So if you see the green light over here, then the green part of the circle is what's gonna happen. Yeah, you have the red button that just turns off all the sounds, and you have the green button that is actually the one you spam when you start the program for it to register the keyboard. So now I've come to a point where I don't really play without my soundboard. Of course, if I go to someone's place and they don't have a laptop on hand, sure, I will just play music on my phone. But for most of the cases, I already have on my Google Drive a couple of packages, like my default Call of Cthulhu package, my default Pathfinder package, and I just take this jewel with me everywhere as a necklace, and I go out, people look at me, I just respond in sound bites. Yeah. But all jokes aside, I want to talk to you about the sounds that work. How do you figure out what sounds work for your group and like create that particular package that you can then use for every game without needing to like curate the sounds for each session. And by the way, curating sounds for example horror is pretty wild. It's pretty good. So for example, when I'm playing Call of Cthulhu, I would always have some curated monster sounds that I will start playing whenever they are like watched by the monster, whenever something strange happens. Don't have to be monster sounds, but something that sounds otherworldly that you can play anytime that something weird happens or when something dangerous happens. And this is to train the players so that when they hear the sound again in the same session or some other session, even if you don't do anything, it will bump up the level of suspense a bit. Other than that, if there are some like particular scenarios like falling from a waterfall, or I don't know, plane that is like searching for the players, or anything that's like very particular to the session, is like a type of like unavoidable scene for that session, I would consider adding a special sound effect for that. But I'm talking just about like Call of Cthulhu, these games that need you to do a bit more on the sound effect side to like ramp up stuff. But usually for all genres, I've found out that there are a few things that you need. One is different types of music. So let me go through these. You need what I call regular music, which is like what you would have in the background of any RPG game while you're like walking around the town, walking around the forest, whatever. You would have, for example, for Call of Cthulhu, for my regular music is just some swing jazz type of thing, you know? And for Cult, for example, it would be dark jazz ensemble, something like that. Something that is setting the starting vibe of the game in relation to the setting that the game is starting in, if that makes sense. So the second thing I have is always like an action scene thing. For Pathfinder / D&D, I have like some tribal drums and like what you get when you type 1 hour combat music into Google, like a generic type of thing. And here I would make a note that the second type of action music should be something that is mind-blowing. For example, for Call of Cthulhu, I have like some space horror orchestra type of thing. For Pulp Cthulhu, I would have like Indiana Jones soundtracks from the end of the movie. For Pathfinder, I would have the Doom soundtrack. As I said, cosmic horror versus Doom, like that sort of thing. You use it to create like cliffhangers, to pump up emotion right before the end of the session. Don't use it before the end, okay? All the players are tired, I start an encounter, they are rolling for initiative. At that moment, I press the button on the soundboard and you just hear. They all light up. I always just stand up, start like asking for rolls, asking for things, become energetic, and it really like uplifts the room so much that we can like carry through the tactical and sluggish combat that Pathfinder has. For Call of Cthulhu, the same thing. When you're gonna have the ending, when everything is culminating, that's when you switch, like the last 10 minutes, that's when you switch to the space opera of Eldritch Horror, and that just gets everyone in the room hyped so much. The fourth soundtrack is usually something that's like a bit of suspense, but more on the mystery side, like something you're going through the cave and you're like trying to like find out what is happening, or you're investigating a murder type of thing, some noir type of stuff. And it works for all settings. Then the next one is horror, but horror like something that causes despair, something that causes dread, like dreadful music, something that can go in the background. And of course, one tip is never use songs with words, never songs with like special effect that will pull attention of the players. So just instrumentals that invoke a certain emotion. I have this one soundtrack, and I will put it in the description, from freesound.org, that causes dread perfectly. When it loops for a couple of times, people forget that it's there, but they still feel the dread. They feel that your soundboard is doing something to them. So they go into the roleplay and into the game much deeper than usual. And I would say that is it for music. I add in Pathfinder like some nostalgic fantasy music, for example, for those moments where the NPC, our friend, is dying. He's sacrificing his life for us. I would say that is optional. Yeah, you can include sad music. It's not something that you would be pulling out that often, but yeah, sure, why not? The rest is ambience and sound bites. So for ambience, I usually go with like a town ambience where people are just like going around shopping stuff, la 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 la. I use that for both taverns and villages. You don't need to have like a slightly different crowd of people saying slightly different stuff for a tavern, just use the same one. I have the forest one with like chirping birds and like it's all nice, and you can hear like some wind, water and that sort of stuff. You can use the same thing for jungles, swamps. Then the most important ones, those would be rain and thunder, wind, campfire sound, like the crackling sound, and crickets. And why these? Well, if you want to simulate like it's night and they are in the camp and they're sitting around the campfire, you don't play music there. You just, when you turn off the music, that's when they are like, okay, it's night. Suddenly, their ears were being filled with information for example, a couple of hours, and now you just stop the music. You just turn on the campfire and the crickets. Ooh, it creates the atmosphere so nicely. And what if you just like turn on rain? For example, you don't need the other sounds, just rain. Or even like if you have an action scene and you add rain and thunder and wind, now you have like this imagery in your head that everything is like in chaos, and you can add like some penalties for the rain and all that, but you have a constant reminder that in your mind's eye you will see that rain, you will see that thunder. And when talking about thunder, something that I'm working on right now is actually integrating some smart lights onto this, so that you can like connect your LifeX bulbs or Philips Hues or whatever to the soundboard. When you have like thunder, the lights would flicker. That's something I did. I have a proof of concept. I did that for, I think it was Deadlight in Call of Cthulhu, and yeah, the players loved it. And of course, with everything in DMing, don't overdo it. So you don't need a bunch of sounds, you don't need a bunch of lights. Just like having lights change once during a session is just enough, because that's the novelty. That's something that will get their attention. It will like be the change of perspective, and that's what we are going for. You don't need like a flashy show for people to have fun. You need like different types of things that will play around with their feelings, play around with their imagination. That's why I do a lot of props, for example. But that's a video for another time. I have to talk about prop making at one point. If you want to see me talk about props, and I make a lot of props, it's just some props. Look at me dumpster diving. If you want to see me talk about props, please consider subscribing. Like, that helps a lot. And yeah, we're growing so fast I don't even know what to think about all this. Why are you listening to me talk about this shit? But yeah, I was trying to say that imagine just an empty hallway and you just play the wind sound effect. It simulates like emptiness. It simulates like airflow, strange like cavern feelings. You can paint with these elementary things in such a interesting and simple way. And the last thing is sound bites. And for sound bites, it is something that you need to curate for your table. I think everything that I've talked about so far goes for pretty much every table, but this one, it is something that has to be curated. Why? Because these are here to emphasize dramatic moments, but very slight moments. They can be used as a narrative tool, they can be used as a comedic relief, or they can be used as emphasis, like some form of punctuation to the things that are happening. Best example, the NPC stands and listens to the players. One of the players says, "There's no other way around it. We would have to sacrifice someone over here." And they both look at the NPC. At that point, the NPC reaches for his gun. The player sees me going for my gun, also gets his gun. We both take out the guns at the same time. I press the gunshot. At that point, like, poof, no one knows who is dead, who got shot. That slight moment of tension, that gunshot, like, made his eyes widen. That's what we are going for. It punctuates, it elevates the split second when it happens. And bear in mind, if you have any guns in your game, gunshot is a mandatory thing on your soundboard. Even though if they're like using automatic weapons, you wouldn't like press the button for each shot fired, you wouldn't have the automatic weapon effects. I don't think that is necessary. You would like play normally, but then when someone with the automatic weapon comes to a guy that's on the floor, interrogates him and finishes him off, that last bullet is the one you elevate, the one you punctuate with. The other thing is like explosions. Everybody likes explosions. I think there is no RPG game where there is no at least one explosion. It probably is, like, I have no idea, but I have had explosions everywhere, and explosions are good, explosions are fun. Something in our monkey brains tells us that we need explosions, so put an explosion sound effect on your soundboard. And yeah, for dynamites, TNTs, and big mountains exploding from dragon fires and volcanoes, and for fireballs. If you have a sorcerer or wizard, that's pretty much a must. Another thing, if you have a bard in the party, and this is just another example, they are like trying to be stealthy, but at one point they start their bardic performance or something like that, forgetting that, yeah, in the game everyone can like hear that. Then you just like press the button and the lute starts playing, and they will instantly, you don't even have to like communicate to them that someone could hear them. They don't have to like witness the consequences of someone coming to figure out what they did. the moment they start playing, they hear the music. So it is kind of an instant warning and they just figure out what they did instantly. Two more sound bites that I think are necessary are screams. A male scream and a female scream. Like imagine, you have your players doing something and you just press the scream button so they hear someone scream in the distance. They will instantly like be jolted with like a primal reflex when you hear a male or a female scream. Their wheels will start turning, they will already have some preconceived notions about what is happening. They will maybe want to rush and see for themselves. Also, if they are being like violent towards someone, these horrific screams will actually like let them know what they are really doing. And sometimes I see just the uncomfortableness when they actually hear it. They know it's happening in the game, but like sometimes I just like to jolt them with like a very unsettling scream when they are doing something that would cause an unsettling scream. I mean, it should be unsettling then, right? Other than that, I don't think I'm using that many other sounds. I'd use scared horses. I do use doors open, like doors closed, that type of thing. But I don't use it that often. Mostly like I like the horses because everyone has horses in fantasy. And the same goes for cars. I have car starting and car running effects for Call of Cthulhu, for example, and for modern games. I think that is important. I don't know, figure out what your sound bites are. And I'm totally not against you starting with like a big keyboard and put all of the sounds on it. Just make sure that it doesn't come in the way of your playing and in the way of your DMing. But when you play a bit, you will figure out which sounds are the ones that your players like, that you like, something that is bringing the game up. Take those sounds, compress them to something like this, and then you will have cool swag like me that is small enough to be a wearable. We're following the trends of technology. We make it smaller so you can wear it. Now that I have taken off the keyboard swag around my neck, I can shamelessly ask you if you're willing to subscribe to this channel. And as always, keep on going, keep on loving, keep on being creative, play more D&D, and I will see you in the next one.
Farewell, keepers.